Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. This is week 2. We're going to talk about your credit score. Last week we talked about why credit matters. So if you're still with us, welcome back. If you are new to this channel, we like that you've joined us. I'm Dan with Keller Williams. I've got Forrest Roberts with Fairway Independent Mortgage. And we're going to crack into what is your credit score. And most of us have one. Some of us don't. That really depends on how you run your personal finances. If you run paycheck to paycheck, you function primarily with cash, or if you carry credit cards, you likely have a credit score. So let's have Forrest, help us break this down into a couple of parts. The first thing we're going to talk about is how do we interpret your credit score. What makes it up, the components that contribute to these magic numbers that we live with.
Yeah, so first kind of to recap from last week is the credit score is your ability, it shows the lenders the ability that you're going to repay back any loan that they give you. So it allows them to trust or navigate how risky of a borrower you would be. And so to interpret that score, typically you'll see scores range anywhere from like 300 to 850 to 900, kind of depending on which way you're looking at. We'll get into that later. But to interpret your score and what it means for you, really there's 5 big categories that go into making your score. The first one is going to be your credit mix. So what credit mix is, and this is about 10% of what accumulates your score. And that's like, do you have a credit card? Do you have an auto loan? Do you have a personal loan? Do you have a mortgage? There's different types of credit that go into building that score. So they want to see that you have a little bit of a mix. You're not just 100% credit cards, or you're not 100% on the car loan or 100% on the mortgage. They want to see that you have it from a couple different areas and that you're making those payments back in those areas. The second one is going to be new credit. So new credit also consists of about 10% in the calculation for your score. And that's like if you have a new trade line. So you opened up a new credit card, you opened up a new mortgage and things like that. So they want you to be active in your credit profile is what that means. They don't want it to be where you have credit cards or credit loans that happened 30 years ago and you have nothing active now. So it's not like, hey, you have to go keep opening up new stuff. They just want to see activity being current more than anything. The next one here is going to be the length of your credit. So kind of back to that 30-year length. But if you've had credit for 30 years, but let's say you had 10 total loans and 5 of them are closed, that's going to shorten up your length because they're only talking about length of current accounts that are active. So the biggest one to help improve that is like a credit card, because I think I have my first credit card from when I was 18 going into college, and I'm never going to get rid of that card because it just is going to help increase my length and help increase my score just because that card is open and active. So if you have a credit card you don't really want to use too much, maybe throw Netflix on it and throw an auto pay and forget about it. Chop it up, you don't need to worry about it, but that will help increase the length of your score. And the length affects about 15% of what your credit score is. So the longer you have credit, the better. That's why if you close an account, you may see your score take a slight dip because it doesn't have that account, and that length, maybe it was a 7-year account, has dropped off, so your overall credit length has shortened a little bit. If you have more questions, that definitely reach out to me. I can definitely answer that later. But to continue, the next one we have is 30% of your credit score, and this is how much you owe. So this is your overall credit allowance, basically. So like when you have a credit card, you have a max out of $1,500, $1,000, whatever it is. This number is all of the credits added up, and this is your max. And they do look at like a debt to income ratio on your max. Creditors will. It's a little different than if you're looking for a mortgage or anything like that. We're a little more strict on it, but they do have a max where they're like, hey, you know what? For the amount of income you make, you have too much borrowed out. We need to see you repay some of this back before we extend more credit lines to you. So yeah, that's about 30%. The last one's going to be payment history, which, as we kind of talked about earlier, is making those payments on time. If you're not making payments on time, that's going to kind of decrease that score here, and it can actually, one missed payment, whether it's $5 or $50, can drop your score 50 points. So really, payment history is going to be the biggest factor, and that one's weighted at a 35% ratio. So kind of a little bit there, but and definitely we'll have a graphic, I think you pointed at it earlier, to kind of explain that. But yeah, it kind of breaks down into what all entails. And if you have questions on your own, reach out to Dan, myself. We'd be happy to go over that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Forrest. To Forrest's point, the last two, sections that he mentioned is weighted at 35 and 30%. So these two are really the heavy hitters, if you would. If you are in a position where your credit is suboptimal or you're hoping to improve on your credit, these are areas to definitely focus on. And between myself and Forrest and with Fairway, I think there are programs and strategies that can help you put you on a track to improving your credit as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So first, I noticed when I was looking at my credit report that I pulled through Capital One, I noticed sometimes I see a credit ceiling of 850, and with some other credit reporting agencies, I see a credit ceiling of 900. So is there really much difference between these two values, and does it really matter?
So, no. Really, where the difference is coming from is it's going to be like FICO, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. So these are like the main credit companies that evaluate your score. There's different algorithms, I'm going to call them, of what they use to calculate your score, and they all have a different threshold. So FICO could go up to 850 and Experian could go up to 900, and it could be you're at the max for both one of them.
Sure.
And it's just what that algorithm's going to give out.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and kind of similar to that point, Credit Karma. So Credit Karma is great because you can get your free score, if you're going up or down or wherever each month. But they use an older algorithm, which is why they're able to give it to you free each month. So that's basically that goes into more layers of these algorithms. There's probably 20 of them for each different one. So if you see your score is different from applying for a credit card than a mortgage, or looking at Credit Karma and applying for an auto loan, it's because of the different algorithm, not necessarily that your score has drastically changed.
Fantastic. So for everything Forrest has suggested, and things that we've talked about in this episode, last week and the following weeks, you're going to find all that information down in the description below as well, in case you need to reach out to us, or go hit up Credit Karma, or you mentioned the Credit Guru or something last week as well.
Oh, My Credit Guy.
My Credit Guy.
He's out of Florida.
Okay,
Yep.
mycreditguy.com is another resource I'm going to have in the description below. So feel free to hit up those links as well. Last thing I wanted to touch on this week is really the general threshold for what lenders and banks consider nominal or sufficient credit at a point where they are willing to start having those conversations with you, talking about lending you money and moving that process forward, whether you're talking about an auto loan or buying your first or your fifth house. Can you say more to that first?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to break it down kind of general four categories. We're going to have bad, fair, good, great, or excellent. And really, so we'll start with bad. Bad is basically anything from 300s to 629. And at that 629, that doesn't mean you can't qualify for a credit card, auto loan, or mortgage. It just means it might be a little more difficult, and there might be some give and take or a little more steps to take to get that loan done. Still possible, still definitely reach out. We can still definitely help you get on the right track if that's what you're looking for. Next one I'm going to say is fair is going to be 630 to 689. And that one is, okay, we've got maybe something happened 4 years ago, 5 years ago, what dropped your credit, but you've been building it back. Things look good, and that's really what the creditors are going to look for. Hey, if something happened, they get it. You're human. We don't get taught credit when we're in high school or college or anything. But okay, you're on the right track. You're coming back. You've learned your lesson. Good, 690 to 719. You should be able to go out there and pretty much get any loan that you want. You may not have the best terms, but you should be able to qualify for pretty much anything at that point. And then excellent, we're looking at 720 to that 850, that 900 range. And in there, you should be qualifying for that top tier bucket, the best rates, the best all of that. So yeah, questions on that, definitely reach out. Again, we'll have a fancy little graph chart here too for you.
Fantastic. In this industry, I run into a lot of families across the whole spectrum. The ones with good credit we're not as concerned about, but there are a lot of people with concerning credit. Stuff in the 400 to 500 range, thereabouts. And I just wanted to touch on that real quick. How do you get yourself from there to a point, in the 580 to 620 range where lenders are willing to have those conversations with you? That process takes time. The bottom line is it does take time. It takes a certain discipline. It takes a certain want to get your credit improved so that you can get to those objectives you want to focus on. And that is next week. That is next week. Hope this was more useful than last week, perhaps. We dropped quite a bit more information. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or Forrest. Our information is down in the description below. Drop in next week. We're going to have even more good stuff for you and really get to the meat of this 5-part series. Catch you next week.
Take care,
See ya.
guys.